Breaking news this Thursday night, another change to the guidelines about the AstraZeneca vaccine. The latest advice adding to anxiety and confusion, while pressure builds to relax travel restrictions.
We need a safe and science-based reopening.
Suspected killer on the loose, the manhunt in Manitoba, underway this hour. Murder mystery in BC.
This case is one of the most atypical, strange.
A woman's death and the questions about a secretive company and its activities in Canada. And attention shoppers, why some stores are removing all cashiers and going all self-checkout.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin with breaking news about the AstraZeneca vaccine. Advice about it has evolved ever since it was approved for use in Canada, and today it changed yet again. The National Advisory Committee on Immunization now recommends provinces stop administering the AstraZeneca vaccine to those who are waiting to get a second dose of it. Instead, Canada's public health officer says an mRNA vaccine, either Pfizer or Moderna, is the preferred second dose, based on emerging evidence of a potentially better immune response.
But it's really the immunogenicity, that immune response after that mixed dose schedule that's resulted in NACI updating this recommendation because all of the accumulated study essentially suggests that that immune response is a better response. And of course, we will continue to monitor this.
NACI does say, though, those who got 2 doses are protected. It also says there's new evidence of vaccine-induced blood clots, or VIT, after a second dose of AstraZeneca. It says the likelihood of developing the condition after getting the second shot has increased over time, with current estimates of approximately 1 per 600,000 people vaccinated. It's now up to the provinces to take NACI's advice and change their plans for AstraZeneca second doses. Another big story that depends on vaccines is the lifting of travel restrictions. Canada's premiers are meeting with the Prime Minister about that tonight. As vaccines ramp up, rules about international travel, including crossing the border to the U.S., are still stuck in neutral. It's no surprise there's a need for a plan to get back to normal. 2/3 of Canadians live within 100 kilometers of the U.S. border. The U.S. is our biggest trading partner, and pre-COVID, it was the most popular tourist destination for Canadians. Freedom is tied to vaccinations, and right now about 16% of Canadians have had both doses and are fully protected. As that number rises, so does the pressure to have a plan to loosen restrictions. David Akin is with me from Ottawa. David, this meeting with the premiers just wrapped up, and I guess sources say it was productive?
It was productive, but you know, it's interesting, Donna, because at times during this pandemic, some premiers have been howling, of course, for Ottawa to tighten those border restrictions. Well, I can tell you the mood has certainly changed. And so this meeting wrapped up, and the premiers and the PM, in fact, did talk about easing border restrictions, and that was the main item on tonight's agenda. The Trudeau government, though, wants the provinces to lead the way, so the premiers at today's meeting are looking at the very least to provide some consensus and clarity to the federal government on things like vaccination certificates and timelines to ease restrictions.
Premier Ford is working this week with federal, provincial and territorial leaders to make sure that we have a consistent approach in how we reopen the border safely. Some premiers have requests specific to their region. Alberta Premier Jason Kenney, for example, wants to reopen the Edmonton airport to international travel. It has been closed to out-of-country flights for 15 months, and that closure has cost the Edmonton economy more than $1 billion.
And this is why it's such an urgent need to make sure that we, one, understand what the rules will be to reopen, but two, also make sure that we're set when that does come, that we're set to go and really get into the recovery phase quickly.
The pressure to ease travel restrictions is not just coming from premiers. There are MPs in Trudeau's own caucus itching for the government to act on the advice of a federal panel of experts, which has said travel restrictions can now safely be eased.
We all need to raise our voices and say we need a safe and science-based reopening.
Americans, too, are getting impatient with Canada.
Would allow my Buffalo neighbors to take a 9-hour flight to Paris, France, but they can't take a 90-minute drive to Paris, Ontario.
Now, Donna, you mentioned the meeting was productive. That's what I heard as well. Some premier's offices saying it was uneventful, which is also code for productive. Now, the meeting tonight went long. It was only scheduled for an hour, and they took 2. And sure enough, as I mentioned, details on borders was the top topic. But the meeting ended with more questions really than answers. BC's Premier John Horgan, for example, he's pressing for details on opening his province to cruise ships. But again, no answer yet on that or when fully vaccinated Canadians will be able to return without full quarantine. That's still to come. Donna?
All right, David Akin in Ottawa, thanks. A manhunt is underway tonight near the Manitoba-Ontario border for a man suspected of murder. The RCMP say Eric Wildman is considered armed and dangerous. He's described as 6'2", around 170 pounds, with blue eyes. He was spotted driving a Chevy Equinox near Whitemouth, Manitoba. The search is now focused on the Whiteshell area, a region popular with campers and cottagers. Marney Blunt is in the region tonight tracking developments.
A quiet scene on the streets of Whitemouth, Manitoba, the area the last known sighting of Eric Wildman, a 34-year-old at the center of an RCMP manhunt. And it's leaving the community on edge.
Some were pretty concerned. Some said before they went to work this morning they actually went and locked all their buildings and that. So there is a little bit of that fear factor that's going on.
Wildman is a suspect in the death of Clifford Joseph. The two were neighbors in a community northeast of Winnipeg. Joseph's body has not yet been found, but RCMP are calling it a homicide. Police believe Wildman is driving a 2020 gray Chevy Equinox. Officers also say they found police tactical gear in his truck, as well as clothing that resembled a police uniform. They say he is armed and dangerous. East of Winnipeg, near the Ontario border, residents in the community of West Hawk say there's been a heavy police presence.
There's a lot of police and RCMP driving by, I've noticed, every few minutes.
Burnett says it has some feeling uneasy.
They're kind of scared, especially because there's a lot of families here. So they got kids to take care of.
Police say they're doing everything they can to find the suspect, but the search is complex.
It's, a provincial park. There's lots of trails and bushes and roads and you name it. So it's a bit of a challenge.
Ontario Provincial Police just reopened the border 1 day ago after it was closed for more than a month due to COVID-19 restrictions. The RCMP says it's working with the OPP on the case. Donna?
Marney Blunt in West Hawk Lake, Manitoba, thanks. In Ottawa, the Defence Minister is facing an all-out attack from the opposition. Harjit Sajjan is the target of a House of Commons vote condemning his handling of some major files involving allegations of sexual misconduct in the military. Our Ottawa Bureau Chief Mercedes Stephenson explains what is underway. Mercedes?
Donna, it's been a tough week for the Defence Minister. The motion comes amid growing calls for Sajjan to either resign or be fired after more questions about his leadership emerged following the now notorious golf game between military brass and former Defence Chief John Vance, who is under police investigation for sexual misconduct. While the opposition can't force Sajjan out, they can publicly scold him, and that's what's expected to happen tonight in the House of Commons. The opposition is taking aim at the minister's handling of the sexual misconduct crisis that has engulfed the Canadian forces. It also criticizes Sajjan's handling of the government's battle with Vice Admiral Mark Norman. Conservative leader Erin O'Toole led the charge in question period.
How possibly can the women in the Canadian Armed Forces have any faith in this minister to do his job after he failed them so badly?
There is clearly a toxic culture in our armed forces, and that must change. And I do want to say our government has full confidence in our Minister of National Defence.
The vote to censure Sajjan is expected to pass later tonight, with the NDP and Bloc both supporting it. But it won't carry any formal consequences, aside from the public shaming. In the meantime, Sajjan is again apologizing and vowing to do better.
I also feel the pain of our members, and I will do my darnest and best always for the sake of the Canadian Armed Forces until we get an environment that's inclusive.
Meanwhile, time is running out for the Defence Committee to produce its report on military sexual misconduct amongst the senior ranks. That committee shut down its hearings amid acrimonious debate in April that saw the Liberals insisting the time was needed to produce a report, while the Conservatives and NDP wanted to hear from more witnesses. But now, with 2 meetings left and lots of filibustering, that report may never see the light of day. On Thursday, the Status of Women Committee released its report into military sexual misconduct. It makes 21 recommendations, pressing the government to act quickly. But for now, there are questions about whether the minister is up to the job of seeing those changes through. Donna?
Mercedes Stephenson in Ottawa, thanks. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has named a nominee to join Canada's Supreme Court. Justice Mahmoud Jamal is an expert in constitutional law and was a litigator before becoming an Ontario Court of Appeal judge in 2019. He taught at McGill and Osgoode Hall Law Schools and is fully bilingual. In a statement, the Prime Minister says Justice Jamal, with his exceptional legal and academic experience and dedication to serving others, will be a valuable asset to our country's highest court. Born in Kenya to a family originally from India, he is poised to be the first person of color on the Supreme Court of Canada. Coming up, one of the strangest cases BC police say they have ever investigated. One year ago today, police say a Chinese woman in Surrey, BC, was brutally beaten to death. Investigators say it is one of the strangest cases they've ever seen. Their investigation has revealed the victim worked for a self-improvement organization. As Jeff Semple reports, the case is raising questions about the Secretive company and its activities in Canada.
Joe Clementi doesn't typically see many people on his drive to work. He lives on BC's secluded Salt Spring Island between Vancouver and Victoria.
It is kind of like a little Sleepy Hollow.
But one afternoon in 2018, Clementi's commute took a strange turn. He spotted dozens of Asian men and women marching down this rural road in military uniforms.
I actually couldn't believe it, and I'm glad I had my camera. On Salt Spring Island.
Clementi uploaded this video to his YouTube channel, where he typically posts videos of his garden. And around this time last year, the footage caught the attention of the RCMP.
This case has to rank as one of the most atypical, strange.
Just down the road from where the video was recorded is this seaside resort, owned by a company called Create Abundance, also known as Golden Touch. The so-called self-improvement organization claims to promote spiritual and financial prosperity. Its leaders own several high-end properties in BC, including this one in Surrey. And on June 17th last year, it became a crime scene after one of Golden Touch's employees was murdered.
Her injuries were so extensive. There was a comment at the beginning of the investigation whether, was she hit by a car?
The victim, Bo Fan, had moved to BC from China in 2019 and helped to organize company events. Police say the 41-year-old was brutally beaten, found clinging to life not far from the clubhouse, where Golden Touch had just hosted a party.
11年的卓绝实践.
The company, which started in China, set up shop in Canada around 2014. Chinese authorities say the organization was previously linked to dozens of pyramid schemes in China and have likened it to a cult. Social media posts show its members attending spiritual seminars and classes in BC, some of which reportedly cost tens of thousands of dollars to attend. Members also appear in military uniforms, posing with what appear to be restricted, even prohibited, firearms.
It is not acceptable in Canada in 2021 for groups to organize themselves in camouflage outfits with weapons, prohibited or not, trying to operate in secret.
No one from Golden Touch has responded to numerous interview requests, and police say they found no evidence to implicate the organization in Fan's murder. But investigators believe that link is important. Jeff Semple, Global News, Toronto.
For more on this, you can listen to Global's new podcast, China Rising. The episode on Golden Touch will be available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. A digital media outlet has fully retracted its story alleging Premier Jason Kenney held private dinners inside a restaurant and a private residence in Alberta while restrictions were in place. It has also apologized to the Premier and Ministers Jason Nixon and Tyler Shandro. Last week, the Premier denied the allegations and sent a cease and desist letter, plus threatened legal action. Still ahead, a first-of-its-kind study on whales in Norway. China has launched the first of several crews that will help build its first full-fledged space station. 3 astronauts took off on this spacecraft towards the construction site. They will live and work on it for 3 months. That will be the longest stay in low orbit of any Chinese national. This is the 3rd of 11 missions needed to finish the station's construction, which began in April. Canadian scientists are among dozens around the world urging Norway to halt a research project involving minke whales. Norwegian and American researchers plan on capturing the whales to conduct experiments over how they perceive sound. As Crystal Gamansing explains, there's fear it will cause too much harm.
Large nets are visible in the ocean near Lofoten, part of an elaborate trap erected by Norwegian and American researchers to capture minke whales so they can test their hearing.
When we first heard about this a couple of months ago, we thought it was a joke, to be honest, because it's a very, very unusual setup, to put it mildly.
When a whale is captured, it'll be funneled into a large holding tank. From there, researchers will secure it between 2 rafts, insert electrodes under the skin, and start testing to see what sounds it can hear and at what frequency.
I mean, really, we know noise is a problem.
Lindy Weilgart has a background in cetacean biology and has been studying underwater noise impacts for 30 years.
We know it even affects ecosystem services. How about we just quiet the noise? How about that?
Noise from seismic testing in the oil and gas sector, as well as Navy sonar tests, are well-documented problems. The U.S. Navy is one of the main funders of this research project. It's being opposed by more than 50 scientists and veterinarians. In a letter to the Prime Minister of Norway, the group expressed deep concerns with the auditory experiments, saying it could lead to considerable suffering for the whales, and they want it stopped. Those involved with the research say they are aware of the letter. Despite the objection raised, they say many scientists are in support of this research. The primary investigator, Petter Kvansheim, says that this sort of data specific to baleen whales, including minkies, is needed in order to protect them. The president of the Canadian Marine Environment Protection Society calls the testing invasive.
It's hard to have any hope doing what you do when you see us moving backwards.
The Norwegian Food Safety Authority approved the acoustic testing. Government officials tell Global News media will eventually be allowed on the site, but having too many people around will be stressful for the whales. Crystal Gamansing, Global News, London.
Unexpected item in the bagging area. Next, why stores are shifting to self-checkouts only. And Rafael Nadal and Naomi Osaka announced they won't be competing at Wimbledon. The men's world number 3 says he is also pulling out of next month's Tokyo Olympics. In a tweet, the 35-year-old Spaniard says he made the decision after listening to his body and says the goal is to prolong his career. And women's world number 2, Naomi Osaka, who's been battling depression and anxiety, will also skip Wimbledon. A statement from Osaka's team reveals she is taking some personal time with friends and family, but will be ready to play in front of her home fans at the Tokyo Olympics. Well, the world seems to be split into 2 camps, those who head for the self-checkout lines and those who can't stand their commands, especially please wait for assistance. Increasingly, you may not have any choice because, as Ross Lord reports, some stores are converting to self-checkout only.
Lining up for the cashier could soon be a thing of the past, at least the living, breathing version.
The lineup where you stand in line patiently, sometimes saying, why can't they speed up the line? And why am I in the line for 10 minutes? That experience will disappear.
The shift is underway. At Amazon's U.S. grocery stores, shoppers barely need to break stride. Everything they select is compiled in a virtual shopping cart. Their accounts are then billed on the way out. Canadian retailers are also shifting to automation. Walmart Canada says a handful of its stores across the country will switch to self-checkout this summer as part of a pilot program, which suggests it could be the start of something much bigger. More Canadians than ever, it seems, are ready.
Yeah, I like automated. That's my fave.
Oh, it's faster. You're in, you're out quickly.
Polling suggests the pandemic and the emphasis on avoiding contact with others has made automated shopping more attractive.
I think people are starting to really see their experience a little bit differently and will actually value the self-checkout option a little bit more. In fact, we're seeing it in our numbers.
A survey of 10,000 consumers conducted last month shows 53% of Canadian grocery shoppers intend to use self-checkouts regularly in coming months. For younger shoppers, Gen Zs and millennials, the numbers are even higher, topping 60%, tilting the balance in favor of automation. There are still plenty of holdouts.
Like looking up product codes and things like that becomes a bit of a hassle, so I do lean a little bit more towards the going to an actual cashier.
Job loss is another concern, although Walmart Canada says during the pilot program, its self-checkout area will be staffed to help customers figure it out. So, who wins in the end?
I think everyone can win, including consumers, if the technology delivers.
In shopping, as in society at large, it seems the only thing permanent these days is change. Ross Lord, Global News.
And that's Global National for this Thursday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is this. It's a rope tornado that touched down near Fisk, Saskatchewan this week. Most tornadoes start and end as a type of rope tornado, but this one maintained that signature skinny shape throughout. And it's caught the attention of storm chasers around the world. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.